Hi, I'm Michael WOODSON. I do a radio show on KPFT, a Pacifica station in Houston. I do a show called Living Art at 6 a.m. on Fridays, every Friday. And I'm here to make a statement about the Israeli consulate show. I think it's called Voice of Peace. First of all, I need to make clear that I am a kind of employee of the station, so that puts me in a position where I have to exercise some responsibility regarding the criticism of management. I'm a non-paid staff member, which is more than a volunteer. I have certain rights theoretically, and I also have certain loyalties to management that I have to keep in mind. So I need to keep the politics out of it in as much as I have to be responsible as a staff member. I can't. I have to think of the degree of the politics of this with regards to whether this is an issue of activism where I have to throw down by way of activism, as opposed to my responsibilities as a person who represents the interests of the Pacifica listener, to the radio listener, who is actually the one I answer to. They have a structure where the listeners elect a board. That board sends 4 directors to the national board of the 5 stations in Berkeley, where it started, Pacifica started, Los Angeles, New York, and Washington, D.C., and Houston's the 5th. So the real people to answer for this question are the directors who hire the ED, the executive director of Pacifica, that is the boss. So that's the power structure, and so to speak, my boss is the general manager here in Houston, Dwayne Bradley. I respect his work. I think he's Pacifica. I think he's a great person. What I have to say about what's happening here is I don't fathom the decision. I came down to a protest that was happening today because I wanted to ask the question, why this decision? Help me understand, in the situation that it's not really my role as a staff member to question the boss. That's not the order of things, and I think we should handle things orderly. And I'm also a member, so it's a sort of democracy, which gives you a kind of conflict which you could expect in a capitalistic situation, you know, in an economy and a power structure that is, you know, capitalistic and top down. So anyway, the contradictions aside, I can't fathom the decision, and I also came to the protest because I wanted to see if there were any LSB members present that I could help understand the structure of Pacifica. I've been with this since what we call the Take Back. I was part of forming the bylaws. I watched every step of it, and I understand that the LSB, under the Roberts Rule kind of structure and a typical 501c nonprofit structure, answers to the directors. We're a subcommittee in Houston to the directors. So if there's some question of how, if there's a question about a decision made that it disturbs me as a Pacifican, I would go to the LSB or Dwayne, but mostly the pecking order is my representatives on the LSB, who with a committee called the Management Selection and Review, the committee that reviews the manager, would take the question up either in order or as an emergency. It seems to be a crisis to the community. And then, in any way, it's their job to sort of review this, present it to the LSB, and as a kind of subcommittee of the director committee, the board, the national board, they would present what they knew by a vote. You know, they would have a decision or a motion, and they would present that motion, whatever it be, that he's doing a good job, they like it, that it's a compromise, that it was not allowed, shouldn't be allowed, something. They would present the national board with their opinion. The national board, then, it's their job to consider that, take that up, and work with the executive director. So I came to like point that structure out, which isn't very clear, I think, to the community, to the board. A lot of people are new, and maybe my opinion is that they're not real clear on that. Anyway, that's what I wanted to do, to make clear that I would like to ask the Management Selection Review Committee to help me understand the decision to put the Israeli consulate on. Now, the question I have, which I would frame if I were on the review committee, would be how is this Pacifican? How is this in line with the membership of, and the charter of Pacifica? In other words, there's a lot of subjectivity to what it is to be a Pacifican, but I do go to the bylaws to get some sort of grounding. And the bylaws say that we give voice to non-mainstream groups. The Israeli consulate is not non-mainstream, to say the least. I don't understand how we can consider them mainstream, and that to me is a legal issue. How can you give a mainstream group voice on Pacifica when your own mission statement linked to the bylaws, linked to court decisions, say you can't? And secondly, we're supposed to look at the sources of conflict that's in the bylaws, and if the Israeli government is the actor in a conflict, the purveyor of a conflict, how are they looking at the source of it, the condition of it? And those two questions, I feel, need to be answered in order for me to know that it's a decision that is allowable to Pacificans. And that's a subjective position to take, but I think if we look at the bylaws, I think it's a fair question.